Hi, I want to talk to you today about a side of the feminine that is not very much in the conversation. When you talk to women who are doing goddess work, or women that are wanting to connect to more feminine energy, or women that are on the spiritual path, they don't speak about the dark feminine. What we tend to think of when we think of the feminine is this soft, pink, flowery, receptive, joyful, playful, flirtatious, soft feminine. And I love to work with that energy. That's something that I do a lot of work with women on, and that's one face. That's particularly like really the sensual goddess. And there are other faces of the feminine. There's the warrior goddess, who is very related. That's the side of the feminine where a lot of the dark goddesses relate. But I want to speak to you today about this idea of the light feminine and the dark feminine. And very few women tread into the conversation around the dark feminine. They keep it to the pink and the light and bright. But for the women that I work with, we want to be whole. We want to be fully woman, not playing a mask of something that's not true to us. In order for you to really allow yourself to ultimately be able to open and flower and fully, authentically be in that light pink feminine self, you must be able to integrate and own your dark feminine authentically and fully. And so you might be asking, like, what is the dark feminine? What do you mean by that? Well, what I would say is that, I work with goddesses. I work with goddess energy and stories of the divine feminine and how we apply those in our life as women. And every goddess culture around the world has a dark goddess. That face is always there somewhere. And in any true goddess culture. And these goddesses are, as you would think, based on the name dark goddess, they're going to be dressed in dark colors, often like wearing all black, and have horns or snakes or dark wings or fangs or something kind of scary about them. Something that, you might feel a little bit nervous as a woman to even want to own or connect to. But it's an aspect of us that I believe, and I actually not believe, I know, holds our gold. It's like she is the bearer of so much treasure and so much of our power, and ultimately really the holder of the energy that will allow us to truly blossom into that lovely soft pink feminine that we want to be so much, in a real way, when we are sourced and we're whole with her, and we feel that we've integrated her so that she can, in many ways, be a protectress for us. Then we can surrender. Then we can allow ourselves to blossom. And it's also just the fact of a woman's life. To move into the state of what I would say is a queen, a woman who's in her sovereignty, a mature womanhood. We are going to go through we're going to go through challenges. We're going to go through dark periods. And, the women that I work with are women who are on the queen path. Women who know that they're here to be leaders and guides in, whether it's in the corporate world in some way where they're bringing in a new energy, or it's there's, deep on the spiritual path. But these tend to be the kind of the one that I work with. And the more that you are meant to be a leader and a guide for others, the more you're going to have to go through certain challenges. And that's where the idea of the heroine's journey comes in. And the true heroine's journey is the story of integrating the shadow and the light. And it gives us a framework as women for understanding those dark periods. Because if we kind of try and bulldoze and push our way through, or we try and wallpaper over it with like the joy face, or some sort of form of spiritual bypassing, to kind of jump us over the pain or over the suffering or over the challenge, we are going to be on kind of faulty ground. We're not going to be firmly planted and rooted within ourselves. So so the dark feminine, I want to show you some pictures actually. So some examples are Lilith or Kali, and I'm going to show you like an example here of this sort of dark feminine with the crowns or with the horns on her head and like a little crown as well. And here's an example of a Lilith with the snake, another one with the snake. So you see this kind of like dark elements. This is a Reshgagal, and that's who I want to talk to you about in a minute. She's a part of the heroine's journey. But that's these dark colors of, oh, there's this one, right? Like the dark feminine is our grief, it's our sorrow, it's our pain, it's our challenge, it's our anger, our rage, the dark emotions, the dark things we don't want to feel. And we've been socialized to bypass that, to try and put forward a pretty face all the time, right? And underneath there can be so much seething, but we were trying to be the nice version of the feminine, or this sweet, soft, pretty, beautiful. And so we're afraid to embrace the parts of ourselves that we consider to be, that we've judged to be ugly, that are maybe not as well embraced by our society. And I was been thinking recently into fairy tales. I love fairy tales. As a little girl, we hear these stories, and this is where we learn so much about what we're supposed to be like when we grow up, or what the society deems to be the acceptable face of the feminine. And so there are these like sweet characters. There's Cinderella, Rapunzel, Sleeping Beauty, Snow White, and it's this like kind of soft, melodic, sweet, flowing feminine, and that character is always in some way supposed to represent us, right? The ideal version of us. And then what's so interesting is that the villains are always, I was trying to think of a single fairy tale where there was a male villain. They're always female. And they're these dark faces of the feminine. So we're actually taught by our fairy tales as little girls that the dark feminine is our worst enemy, that we need to stay away from that, that's evil, that's bad. And so we're divorced from that part of ourself, and it's implanted in us at a very young age. That's why I love that movie Maleficent, where Angelina Jolie kind of gave this different spin to this character in Sleeping Beauty, who was this horrible, like horned, dark, witchy, evil sorceress. And really I had tears streaming at the end of that movie, because it just was so beautiful to see this like vindication of the dark feminine. But still, there's not enough of that yet in our culture, and we don't have stories that revere the dark feminine. And so as a result, we divorce ourselves from those parts of ourselves within, and we also we become disembodied with where those energies exist within us, because it's all mapped out within us. Like our darkness and our underworld is in the parts of ourselves that we're shamed around, and we don't feel like we can integrate. We stuff down into the lower part of our body. And we also become challenged around really, how do we embrace the dark times in our life? So we live in a culture that reveres the feminine in that way, and it also just reveres light in general. So I'm happy to say that I'm a dark worker, not just a light worker. So many people want to say, I'm a light worker, or I'm sending you light. It's always the light. And there's something very beautiful and authentic and true about the power of light. And yet there is a way that we're so afraid of the dark. We become afraid as little children of the dark at night. I live in California, and it's like always sunny here. And it's like we're very resistant to the seasons, because the seasons are also, and the time, like we have day, we have night, we have spring and summer, and we have fall and winter. And it's like the seasons also represent this movement of energies, that we're not always going to be in the light, that there is power, there's importance, there's value to darkness. And as I started to get more connected to this myself, I started to really crave darkness. And this can be hard to find in modern United States where I live, like places that are truly dark, because we have just light and electricity. And many times I have clients that want to leave their TVs running at night. It's like we're afraid of the quiet, we're afraid of the dark, we're afraid of what's lurking and lying there. And what I really want to communicate to you today is that everything that is there in the silence, that's there in the darkness, that's there in the parts that you're resisting within yourself, really have the gifts to help make you whole as a woman, and to really unleash and unlock your true power and your true femininity. So there's a heroine's journey, and we're all probably somewhat familiar with the hero's journey, which is the sort of the basis of every Hollywood film, where it's usually a male protagonist who goes through these challenges and kind of goes into the cave and fights the dragon and then retrieves the princess and the treasure. And what I think is really marvelous about all that is the recognition that we as women are actually the dragon and the treasure and the princess all at once. And our journey is not the same. We can have fun, we can play with that, but that's not the female version. That's not the heroine's journey to grab the sword and go into the cave and fight the dragon. It's a descent. And there's a story, the descent of Inanna, which is an ancient Sumerian goddess, one of the oldest goddess cultures that we have evidence of. And her story, she was the queen of heaven and the queen of earth, of these upper worlds, this very light form of the feminine, the light goddess. And she makes a descent into the underworld. And the underworld is where her sister Ereshkigal lives. And Ereshkigal is the queen of the underworld. And she's actually some of those images that I showed you, this like very dark figure. And her husband has been killed, and Inanna is part of the reason for that. And so she wants to go and apologize and kind of pay her respects. So she goes and makes this descent into the underworld. And there's 7 gates that she has to go through. And at every gate, she has to remove a piece of her clothing or a symbol of her power, like her crown, her scepter, her earrings, her breastplate, her dress, everything, until she arrives naked and bowed low in the underworld. And she's there for 3 days and 3 nights. She dies down there. And then she's resurrected and she returns. And I'm not going to go into the full details of the story right now, but just to give you that general journey that happens, that she's the goddess of the heavens and the earth. She makes a descent into the underworld. There's this passage of 3 days. And by the way, this predates Christianity, where she's in this kind of death in between space, and then she rises up again. And it's a story of integration. And this is something that we as women, especially as leaders, we go through these deaths and rebirths a lot. And our ego wants to attach to this light, bright, fluffy kind of version of the feminine. And then sometimes these things happen. Something swoops in and we're taken into a place of darkness. And the more that we resist it and we think that something is wrong, the longer that the pain and the suffering exists for us. But when we're actually able to have a frame, that's one of the main things I want you to be able to take away from today, is having a frame that allows you to really accept and embrace the dark periods in your life, the dark aspects of yourself, this dark side of the feminine, that you can go, oh, the dark goddess is getting my attention right now. The dark feminine, this dark side of myself is needing me to be with her and hear something, and then understand that you're going to get great treasure from this experience, and you're going to be able to rise again into another, literally like kind of ascending into a higher level. Each time you descend deeper, then you can ascend higher. And the more that you kind of exercise this within yourself, the more parts of your shadow that you integrate, the more joy, pleasure you can actually invite into your life, truly. So how does this translate? Like, how do you as a woman implement this? How do you actualize this connection to your dark goddess and your dark feminine? One is just to start to take note and give yourself permission to embrace and even relish these times of darkness that come. And then you can also choose to start to integrate her on a more regular basis on your own and start to explore and look at, where have I been resisting parts of myself? And it's like, the more that you resist and you pretend something doesn't exist, the larger it grows, actually. So a lot of times what I see is like, women, we're trying to put on, and I see this a lot with like women who are, getting a lot of like work done the face or that kind of thing. We're like trying to put on this face of like the happy young maiden and like everything's all right, but we're not dealing with the pain and the things that are happening underneath the surface to really cleanse and clear that. And the more that you embrace and you give yourself full permission to have your down days, or to invite in even that darkness, invite in feeling your tears, feeling your sorrow, feeling griefs that you haven't digested yet, that you haven't allowed to really move through. Looking at shadows from your childhood, all of this, like the more that you go into the places that are ugly, the more beautiful you become. The more you go into the places where you've been fearful or scared, the more strong and courageous you become. It's like going into really the opposite of whatever it is that you want to cultivate within yourself, and exploring that in order to really understand this law of opposites, how they feed each other. And one of the things you can even do is get a little journal that's like your dark journal. And, for myself, Lilith is an energy that I've been working with quite a bit in the past year. And it has to do with different things from my past and my family. And really going through and just like journaling and drawing pictures of things and exploring with her, seeing what she has to say, letting her speak through you. So this has gotten really long because there's so much I wanted to say about it, but I want to leave you with that today, which is just choose to spend some time open to what the dark goddess may want to say to you. Maybe get a journal, embrace her, and understand that she is an aspect of your divine feminine that's really valuable, and that you want to honor her and give her space. All right, that's it for today.